Well, during a press conference celebrating his first year in office, President Trump said that God was very proud of the job he's doing as president. Trump added that God was probably looking up at us right now, smiling from horn to hoof. Also, remember when President Trump straight up told us he was going to hell?
I think I'm not maybe heaven bound.
But he thinks that after this week, God is back.
And all of a sudden, I got a call. He said, I have a red button on my desk, meaning a nuclear button. I said, I have a red button on my desk too, but it's bigger and stronger than yours, and mine works. And they said, whoa, nobody's ever talked to us that.
Picture this. Colin, Jost, and Michael Che don't just crack jokes. They drop comedy bombs so big, they make fake news feel like amateur hour. Trump thought he was walking into a casual roast, but instead, he's trapped in a full-blown comedic demolition zone. Every smug grin, every ego puff, every I'm the best claim is about to get obliterated, and yes, the fallout is priceless. Buckle up, because nothing is safe, and everything is hilarious.
Khamenei was chosen by Iran's 88-member Assembly of Experts. Make that 62 members. President Trump posted a message on Truth Social reading, Iran will have a great future, make Iran great again, or MIGA, as in, this nigga crazy.
Once again, I look at the Democrats in front of me, and I realize there is absolutely nothing I can say to make them happy, or to make them stand, or smile, or applaud. Nothing I can do. I could find a cure to the most devastating.
From the moment the camera clicked on, you could practically feel the tension in the air, as if the universe itself had paused to see how many layers of absurdity could be peeled off one man's ego before it collapsed entirely. And oh, it did not take long.
Yesterday, President Trump finally released what everyone has been asking him to release.
Nice.
George Santos, the former Republican congressman who had pled guilty to fraud and something called aggravated identity theft, which I think is when you push someone into a closet and switch clothes with them, is now free and will face zero consequences. But Santos says that he's a changed man, and he even released a photo of his new prison body.
The first strike came disguised as casual banter, the kind that lulls you into thinking, maybe this will be polite. But within seconds, the casual facade shattered like cheap glass. They started dissecting everything. The bluster, the bravado, the way he treats public appearances like a self-produced reality show no one asked for.
Trump called off his proposed tariffs on European countries who opposed his desire to acquire Greenland. Trump backed down after consulting his most trusted advisor, the Stocks app. The singing of the U.S. national anthem at an NBA game in London was interrupted by protesters yelling, "Leave Greenland alone." And you know we've gone too far when the British are like, easy on the colonizing old chump.
Every posture, every expression, every carefully orchestrated hand gesture became fair game. Watching them work was like watching a highly trained demolition crew take a sledgehammer to a sandcastle that thought it was a fortress.
It marks the start of the third week of the war in Iran, which is weird because someone told me that we already won it on the first day. Usually when a team wins, they don't then stay on the field for 3 more weeks. It kind of seems like the main thing we've done so far is get rid of an 86-year-old Ayatollah Khamenei and replace him with a 56-year-old Ayatollah Khamenei. You know, a younger, crazier bad guy, hell-bent on revenge. We did it.
And then there was the timing. Oh, the timing. Every punchline landed exactly where it needed to, dragging the ego across the floor in slow motion, making the audience wonder how anyone could be so self-important and so easily lampooned at the same time. The beauty of it wasn't just that they were funny, it was that they were surgical. Nothing random, nothing wasted. They picked apart the myths and the contradictions and presented them with the kind of wry, knowing smirk that said, yes, you think this is impressive. Watch how fragile it really is. Michael Che took aim at the theatrics, turning every over-the-top statement into a question that revealed the underlying absurdity. The bravado of claiming achievements while sidestepping the fine print, the constant reminder that nothing is ever his fault, the bizarre insistence that reality bends to his will. Che's commentary made it all look like a poorly scripted sitcom where the lead actor forgot his lines but keeps improvising anyway. And the audience couldn't help but watch, wide-eyed, as if someone had accidentally handed them front row seats to a masterclass in ego deflation.
President Trump claimed that affordability is a new word made up by Democrats to hurt him. But if Democrats really wanted to make up a word specifically to hurt Trump, it would probably be fatmincha. President Trump also complained about immigrants from countries like Haiti and asked, why can't we have some people from Norway instead? Or how about someone who's Norwegian and Haitian, like Times Square Elsa?
Meanwhile, Colin Jost attacks were a little more subtle, like slow burn comedy mines planted under the foundation. He'd start with a sly observation, something that sounded harmless on the surface, and then, boom, the layers of irony would explode, leaving even the most loyal supporters squinting, trying to figure out what just happened. Every tweet, every public statement, every triumphant claim was reframed in such a way that it became impossible to ignore the sheer ridiculousness of it all. By the time the audience realized they were laughing, it was already too late. The jokes had embedded themselves deep in the psyche, leaving echoes that kept bouncing around long after the segment ended. And let's not forget the imagined reactions. You could see him in your mind's eye, the smug smile frozen halfway between pride and panic, the slight narrowing of eyes that screams, "I didn't sign up for this," the tiny, desperate nods that are supposed to look confident but read more like a man watching his sandcastle crumble in real time. Meanwhile, Jost and Che kept pressing, like two chefs seasoning a dish until the flavor was unbearable but irresistibly delicious. The interplay between the two comedians was perfection. Che would land a verbal jab, and Jost would follow with a twist that amplified it, a recursive echo that made the original strike feel like the opening salvo of a full-scale siege. They moved like tag team wrestlers in the arena of ridicule, hitting angles nobody saw coming, forcing the audience to lean in closer, because if you blinked, you might miss a subtle, devastating implication that could ruin a carefully constructed image in under 10 seconds.
While traveling on Air Force One to the Middle East to celebrate the ceasefire, President Trump told reporters, "I don't think there's anything that's going to get me into heaven." Then he paused for 10 full minutes, waiting for someone to say, "That's not true." Because Trump can't go to heaven. He's far too busy down here, running hell. John Bolton, who wants people to stop coming up to him to order chicken, has become the third person on President Trump's enemies list to be.
The commentary on public appearances alone was enough to keep the audience glued. Every rally, every stage photo op, every meticulously crafted persona was suddenly laid bare, stripped of the theatrics, reduced to a combination of awkward gestures and over-rehearsed lines. Watching it unfold was like seeing someone attempt to juggle flaming swords blindfolded, except the swords were made of ego and the audience had the instruction manual. And the best part? The comedians didn't need to shout. They let the absurdity speak for itself, and it screamed. Then came the deeper layer, the one that turned the laughter into a mix of awe and disbelief. They didn't just aim at surface-level quirks. They hit the contradictions, the hubris, the inconsistencies. Every statement that once sounded like a triumph became a comedic trap. Every claim that was meant to awe the public turned into fuel for a joke, so sharp you could practically hear it cut through the air. And the imagined reactions? Oh, the imagined reactions were cinematic. The subtle flinch when a joke hit too close to home. The twitch of irritation that tries to mask humiliation. The faint hope that a laugh might somehow save the day, even when it clearly couldn't. But it wasn't cruelty. No, it was craftsmanship. There's a delicate art to ripping someone apart in public without ever seeming mean-spirited. Jost and Che understood this. Their attacks were precise, exaggerated, and relentless, yet somehow hilarious instead of hostile. They turned arrogance into a spectacle, turning each overblown statement into a prop for comedy, and every defensive posture into a punchline. The audience didn't just laugh. They marveled at the efficiency of the humor. Watching them work was like watching a master sculptor chip away at marble, revealing an unexpected form hiding beneath layers of ego.
Last week, President Trump hosted multiple events at the Kennedy Center, including an award ceremony for Sylvester Stallone, Gloria Gaynor, and rock band Kiss, as well as a musical performance by the Village People, which raises the question, is Donald Trump a gay man from 1978? The Archdiocese of New York announced that it will set up a $300 million fund for victims of sex abuse. The church encourages victims to claim the money by sticking their hand in this here hole.
And let's be honest, the absurdity practically wrote itself. The imagined scenario of him trying to defend his record while the comedian circled, each observation more cutting than the last, is almost too perfect to be real. The way he would try to turn a gaffe into a boast, only to have it reframed as a catastrophic comedy moment. This is the stuff of legend. Transitioning from public appearances to personal quirks, the pair didn't hold back. The peculiar ways he presents himself, the exaggerated mannerisms, the overconfidence that teeters into delusion, they dissected it all. Each subtle movement, each peculiar phrasing, each effort to command the room became raw material. Che would exaggerate it with sly irony, turning a small gesture into a monumental comedic mountain, while Jost would provide the context that made the absurdity unavoidable. The combined effect was relentless, but irresistible. You couldn't look away, partly because it was funny, and partly because you had to see just how far the jokes could go before reality caught up. Then there was the imagined boardroom of logic versus ego. You can picture it. He's sitting there, imagining his audience hanging on every word, and Jost and Che are on stage, pulling back the curtain, revealing every inconsistency, every self-congratulatory claim, every carefully crafted image as the fragile illusion it truly is.
Also, is it weird that I'm kind of jealous that Iran now has a leader under 80 years old? God, remember how much better our country was doing when we had a young Muslim leader? I don't know if you caught the Muslim part. President Trump said in an interview that he believes Iran's Ayatollah Mujtaba Khomeini is damaged, but probably alive in some form, which is also a pretty great description.
Each joke is a mirror reflecting not just the action, but the intention, and suddenly what was meant to inspire awe inspires laughter. And in this imagined boardroom, the silence after each punchline is deafening, punctuated only by the realization that the facade has been perfectly, ruthlessly exposed. But the real brilliance isn't just in the jokes themselves, it's in the escalation. What starts as casual ribbing evolves into an all-out demolition, a carefully constructed crescendo where every remark builds on the last, leaving no safe space for ego or pretense. The audience is carried along in this rising tide of laughter, curiosity, and disbelief, never sure which jab will land next, never sure how far the unraveling will go, but desperate to see it all. Each segment feeds into the next, creating an irresistible momentum that keeps the viewer glued to the screen. And the transitions themselves deserve applause. They aren't clunky or forced. They glide effortlessly, moving from public gaffes to personal quirks to imagined consequences without ever losing pace. Each beat introduces a new angle, a new absurdity, a new way to dismantle the carefully maintained image. Che's sharp timing, combined with Jost's subtle framing, ensures that the comedy never feels repetitive, even as it circles back to previously explored territory, each iteration sharper, funnier, more devastating. The imagined reactions continue to add layers of hilarity. You can picture him attempting to respond, trying to reclaim some shred of dignity, only to have the next joke land like a perfectly aimed comedic missile. The flustered attempts, the forced smirks, the slightly unhinged stares, they're all part of the visual punchline, reinforcing the humor in a way that words alone can't capture.
President Trump announced that another alleged drug smuggling boat from Venezuela has been blown out of the water without warning. And you may not think that's a big deal right now, but one day soon, you'll look at yourself in the mirror and realize you're out of cocaine. President Trump criticized Time magazine for using a bad picture of him on the cover, saying, quote, "They disappeared my hair." And I gotta agree, that thing do look...
And the audience? They revel in it, delighting in the dance between bravado and reality, each step more absurd than the last. They even toyed with the idea of consequences, of public perception. How would someone so obsessed with image cope with such relentless exposure? Every boastful claim, every exaggerated story, every performance of confidence is met with an ironic twist that highlights its fragility. And it's not mean, it's meticulous, like a scientist demonstrating a principle by letting the subject unknowingly illustrate it themselves. The audience isn't just entertained, they're witnessing a demonstration in ego physics, where hubris is measured in laugh lines and irony. At some point, it becomes almost hypnotic. The rhythm of jokes, the escalation of absurdity, the interplay of timing and exaggeration, it pulls you in, making it impossible to look away. And just when you think they've exhausted every angle, they find a new layer, a new detail, a new absurdity that hadn't been noticed before. The sense of discovery, combined with relentless humor, keeps the audience engaged and invested, eager to see just how far the dismantling will go. And let's not forget the imagined cultural commentary. The absurdities aren't just individual quirks. They're reflective of a larger-than-life persona that thrives on attention, spectacle, and the illusion of mastery. Che and Jost turned each instance into a lens through which to examine the grand performance, the self-styled mythology, the sheer audacity of claiming supremacy while tripping over contradictions. Watching it unfold, the audience is treated to a masterclass in how comedy can dissect not just a person, but the persona they've painstakingly constructed.
President Trump has been inviting world leaders to join his board of peace or be crushed by his council of destruction. Trump's board of peace consists of countries such as Russia and Saudi Arabia, which is like if Law & Order SVU starred... President Trump has spent so much time stalking Greenland like an absolute psycho. He's basically become a guy on a dating app. He's like, hey, Greenland, you look so good.
By the time the finale approaches, the demolition is complete. What remains is stripped of pretense, exposed in all its awkward glory, and utterly hilarious. You can almost hear the echoes of each joke bouncing in the imagined room. The flinches, the widened eyes, the frantic recalibrations, all part of a narrative that is as much about comedy as it is about unraveling the carefully curated image of someone convinced they're untouchable. And yet, in true comedic form, the audience is left wanting more. The genius of Che and Jost isn't just in the jokes themselves. It's in the momentum, the escalation, the relentless curiosity loop. Each observation opens the door to the next. Each exaggeration reveals a deeper absurdity, and each punchline reinforces the impossibility of separating reality from the over-the-top persona. The viewer is hooked, laughing, shocked, and entirely unable to look away, perfectly primed for the next round of comedic carnage. Even imagined future appearances can't escape the scrutiny. Every speech, every public interaction, every carefully orchestrated media moment becomes a potential punchline, a new opportunity for the duo to dissect, exaggerate, and expose. And the audience knows it. Nothing is sacred, everything is fodder, and the absurdity only grows when measured against the relentless machinery of Jost and Che's wit.
A school board in New Jersey is considering a proposal to rename an elementary school after President Trump. Named Trump Elementary, home of the fighting allegations. A special election was held in Georgia to replace Marjorie Taylor Greene. The election was won by the candidate most similar to Greene, a Confederate He-Man doll. Volodymyr Zelensky has said that if President Trump provides Ukraine with Tomahawk missiles, he will nominate Trump for a Nobel Peace Prize. You know, the prize they give you for selling missiles.
Finally, the script of destruction closes with the perfect blend of irony and suspense. We've seen bravado dismantled, gaffes amplified, egos laid bare. We've imagined the flinches, the awkward smiles, the desperate mental recalibrations. And yet, the story leaves the audience craving the next spectacle, the next performance, the next opportunity for absurdity to collide with overconfidence in a symphony of comedic brilliance. It's a cycle, a machine, a perfectly tuned humor engine that keeps the curiosity and laughter alive long after the screen goes dark. Because here's the truth. Jost and Che aren't just telling jokes. They're orchestrating a slow-motion demolition of ego, spectacle, and self-importance. And the beauty of it is that the audience doesn't just watch. They participate. Every laugh, every gasp, Every incredulous shake of the head reinforces the absurdity, making the destruction not only entertaining, but inevitable. And that, perhaps, is the ultimate brilliance of it all.